Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we find, learn, and play the great strategy games. We are currently doing what I'm calling a Let's Play tutorial for Civil War II. That's an AGEOD game based on their AGEOD system. They've also made games for the Napoleonic Wars, World War I. They made a great game called Birth of America, which maybe I'll do a series of videos on that at some point. That's a lot of fun about the Revolutionary War. But we're playing the Civil War, and we are currently in turn number 2. So we're in late April 1861, and let's just kind of look at the map. Now, last time I had things sort of zoomed in a little bit, and maybe it was hard to see kind of the grand picture. You can see this map is very detailed. It's a great map, and you can of course zoom in and zoom out. We see PGT Beauregard here. As of the first turn of the game, he was our only general. We have troops out on the board, but they're mainly militia. A lot of those are fixed troops. The main grouping that we had here was the Carolina Department, and they have moved over and besieged Fort Sumter. Now, we saw last time that that move took 15 days. Every turn is 15 days. So they just got here. You can see underneath here, it's underneath Beauregard. If we move it a little bit here, you can see it. Um, they have put Sumter under siege. I will say last time, maybe I didn't make this entirely clear. Beauregard was here at Fort Johnson, so he was in this, you know, what we call regions in this game. But Sumter, if you kind of have your pin here, it's weird. It's like you have a quill or a pin looking device there. If you put it there, you can see Sumter is kind of its own little region. And so that's why we had to move him over here. Now, if this was all a contiguous region, there was no special little hex here for Sumter, he would have automatically acted on the orders we've given him. We've got him in an assault posture, so we have assault, offensive, defensive, and passive. We've got him in an assault posture. We want him to be very aggressive because, of course, we're going to try to take over, or we want him to try to take over Fort Sumter. We will not actually be, you know, commanding those forces like you would in some games. We're going to leave that up to our generals. So Beauregard is there with his Carolina department. He is currently getting a command penalty of 20% because we did not form him into an army. Now, we could have formed him into an army. We're not going to do that. Um, Sometimes you get to parts of this game and when you've played it before, well, this is why you don't do it, even though it might not be entirely clear to someone watching. But Beauregard, after we take Sumter, is immediately going to be pushed up here to Manassas. The game just automatically reassigns him, which is historical, right? Jefferson Davis pulled Beauregard after he became the hero of Fort Sumter. They pulled him up here to Manassas. Then we will form this army, which will be called the Army of Northern Virginia. That eventually becomes Robert E. Lee's army. We'll see if it plays out that way for us. Lee does become available, of course, but really you don't really have great availability for him until 1862, which is historical as well. So Beauregard is sitting on top of Fort Sumter here. We've got him in assault and in an offensive posture. We do not have him in an all-out attack. I try never to do that. There may be some very specific situations out in the Western theater where we're attacking an Indian encampment or a fort that's not very well defended. We may do it there where we don't really need to besiege, but for something, a large fort like Sumter, we will be doing a siege. So we've got him in sustained attack. So not all out attack, we've got him in sustained attack. We've got conservative attack or feint or probe attack. Nope. We just want him to be in a sustained attack, which means as long as he has the advantage, the battle is on his side, he will continue attacking and not retreat. Whoa, we just went crazy. Um, so that's our real, piece on the board right now when it comes to armies. I will show you in a minute. We've had some more forces show up, and they showed up at Richmond, but we'll get to that in one moment. Now, when I start a turn, so we've played the first turn, and in that first turn, we issued war bonds. So up here, oh, sorry, in the Treasury. We issued some war bonds and we also printed some money. Now we see that we could do this again. Is that true? Did we do war bonds? I think we actually printed money and raised taxes. My fault, yes. We printed money and raised taxes. So those two are gone in our treasury here. So again, we have forces. This is our database. War production. We'll get into this. This has to do with our replacements that will be reinforcing our armies, and we'll go into that. This will show us everything we're producing um, in the first instance. So these will be new battalions, new groupings of men. They will pop up here as we're building them. This will be our replacement group here. So again, up here at this book, this is, your information screen. So we had forces, we can search, we can look. It looks like we got actually a new couple of generals here, so we'll be looking at that during this turn. We have our war production. We have the not specifically named various, but there's nothing here, so that's fine. In the treasury, we raised taxes, we printed money. That did hurt our national morale. It went from 100 to 98. It's now popped back up to 99. The South is in good spirits at the start of the war. Of course, we're going to hope to historically keep that true. The South did have better morale than the North, at least into 1863, maybe even into 1864. We're going to try to take that all the way to the end of the war as we win battles and win this civil war. So those two options are gone. Now they will show up, raising taxes, print money, once every 4 to 6 months or so. And at that time, we'll have to decide, do we want to do this again? Now, as a consequence of us doing those two things, we have raised a bunch of money. So last time, I think we had 150,000. So these numbers here are in hundreds of thousands. So just imagine three zeros after this all the time. Now we're up to 1.4 million, which is great. As the South, we need everything that we can get money-wise and also uh, armament-wise to build these war supplies. So well, we'll get up here and look at this in a minute. Um, Now, since we did not exercise these two options, the issue war bonds, move the capital to Atlanta, we would not do this. We could possibly do this if we needed some money, but no reason to do it this time. Department of the Interior, nothing here. That will give us choices later. Government, we talked about these last time. This is just, essentially bribing the Europeans to get more involved. If we were going for a foreign entry, we're not planning on doing that. I clicked on that twice, so it popped off. Map, this just shows you the grand strategic map. So if you wanted to, look for various things, hide stacks made of fixed units. So we didn't talk about this last time. This could be helpful, of course, if you want to see where all of your stuff is hanging out, or if you want to search for something in particular, hide all friendly land stacks, hide all stacks and fleets. As you can see, so you know, you can filter things and look for things here. Regions. Oh, well, this is interesting. So this tells us every single little region in the game. So here we're on Lexington, South Carolina. So the map is divided up into states. First of all, it's divided between the North and the South. That will be dynamic as we take over different regions. It's then divided up into individual states, which is how you recruit new units. But then it gets even more granular down to the different regions and then finally into individual towns. So this here regions allows you to look at the regions. It'll tell you, whether it has a railroad or road, um, what the terrain type is. If you have, this is how much military control you have, which plays into zones of control, which we'll get into at some point. Loyalty, money production, war supplies production. Let's see, which of our groupings here is producing the most money? None. Damn, that's not great. Um, so anyway, like I said, Richmond, Virginia is pumping out the most war supplies. Oh, I guess I must have searched this the wrong way. Charleston, South Carolina is producing us 26 money every turn. So you can kind of see what the important regions are, maybe what the Union might try to uh, go and take because it is the most valuable regions for us. War supply is so important for the South. You've got to just try to build those up and pump those out, and we'll be doing that turn by turn. Conscripts production, so on and so forth. You can read through these. I just kind of want to show you the grand overview. Here's your objective screen. This is actually quite important, and we didn't talk about this last time. You're seeing what we're playing, when it will end, where our capital is, our current morale. So right now, and this will change, I believe, as the game goes on and lessen on the win level and go up on the defeat level. Um, our national morale is 99. If we could push that to 200 through doing certain things, we would win the game automatically. If we get below 25, we're done for. And one thing we'll try to be pushing for is this goes the same for the Union. So we will be attempting to get the Union to give up the war by driving their defeat level down. We do that by winning battles, taking over territory, essentially making their life miserable. So the people in the North say, let's get out of this war. Total VPs, this would be the other way we would win, is if we cannot drive the North's defeat level, if we can't drive their national morale down low enough, we're going to try to outpoint them and win on the judge's scorecard. Right now, we're getting plus 37 per turn. As we see down here, the US is getting plus 51 per turn. So their morale is much lower than ours. Their VP total is 138. Our VP total is 120, and they're making more every turn. But we're gonna do a couple of things this turn to try to bump our stuff up for an entry level. Now this is very important. Last time we talked about objective towns, and when we pulled up that map, so over here you can pull up objective towns, political states, theaters. There they are. Strategic towns is what they call them. So strategic towns, objective towns, they're a little different. We'll get into that right now. These you can see are objective towns. They're pulsating. I think I mentioned last time that makes them very important. Um, and then strategic towns are just lit up. That means they are important. They maybe produce a lot of war materials, a lot of manpower, which goes into your recruitment. So it it just kind of points out to you on the map, hey, these are the really important places. So again, over here are your map filters. We went through a lot of those last time, so we won't do that again. But let's go back up here to our book. So we had objectives. This shows you as the Southern player, as the Confederate player, the main towns that are your objectives. Richmond, of course, New Orleans. We will do anything and everything to hold on to those two. Um, if we were to capture DC, we get these 50 points. That would also just crater um, net, the Union morale. This 50 means you would get this when you took it over, and you get it for every single turn where you hold DC. So as you can see, if you can take DC and hold that, your total VP points are going to go skyrocketing as they should, and so on and so forth. We might make a play for St. Louis 5 points isn't nothing. Right now, Memphis and Nashville uh, are in the border states, Nashville, Tennessee. Tennessee has not seceded yet, and it is also not declared for the Union. So it is a neutral at this moment. Now, that doesn't last long for Tennessee, um, and the same with Memphis. Kentucky is a different sort of beast. There's different things we'll be doing in this game to either persuade Kentucky to join the Confederacy or dissuade it from joining the Union. The Union will, early in the game, kind of march into Kentucky, which peeves the people of Kentucky and may drive Kentucky into Southern arms, which would be great. So this is your objectives list. You ever want to see how the game's going? Are you ahead? Are you behind? You can go here. Shows morale. It also shows it for Great Britain, France, and Mexico, which are the three foreign entities that could possibly get involved. Um, you see your morale, VP total, how much you're getting each turn, and your total combat power. Now, this is potential combat power that you could have and how much you do have. So we're seeing the US has 168. Um, our Carolina unit, Carolina department has more than that. So, early here in the war, we've fielded a bigger army than the US has. As you can see, the US will be pumping out combat power soon. Background, if you want to read about the Civil War, it's interesting. Feel free. So, back to the task at hand. Now, when I start a turn, I go over here to the right. These messages popping up here, like with a lot of games of this type, in Paradox games, they're up here. Over here, in this game, they're over here to the right. You can see the important messages, the important things that happened in the last turn that the game wants you to know about. So let's click on these and take a look. Um, Leading Virginia leaders and the legislature vote to secede. Great. So now Virginia is part of the Confederacy. You can also tell that because it's kind of lit up here. North Carolina is still dark. North Carolina has not seceded yet. South Carolina has. Georgia has. Florida has. Mississippi and Alabama have, and Louisiana has, and Texas has. So you can see that here on this map just kind of by what's lit up. If we go over here to, as I mentioned before, Tennessee is still in the dark. Tennessee has not seceded yet. So these are neutrals. We cannot, push troops into neutrals. I guess technically we can in some circumstances, but you're going to be making a decision about that because it may cause neutrals to flood over to the Union. Kentucky also kind of darkened out here because they are neutral. But Virginia has seceded, which is great because Virginia gives you most of your money, supplies, and troops early in the game. You can also see we have another tile here. We'll go look at those in a minute. Those showed up the minute Virginia seceded. You have Richmond here. This 8 next to it shows like the size of the town. This is showing, on a scale of 1 to 10, that Richmond is a very big town, one of the biggest towns in the game. DC's a 6. You say, well, that's kind of weird. But DC was kind of a backwater swamp a little bit, still in the mid 1850s and 60s. Oh, Baltimore here. Baltimore is actually a 12. Philadelphia is a 20. So I said 1 to 10. That's obviously incorrect. It's a 1 to 20 scale. New York is 20, Philly is 20. So that's interesting. I guess I was just wrong about that. 12 here. Now you see this little mark? This shows that the railway here has been disrupted. We'll get into that. We like that. Um, we want all the railways in the north to be as disrupted as possible, and there are certain ways that we can do that. You can also start to see Union armies are showing up. These are green raw recruits, uh, and we'll dive into that when we come back up to Virginia. But for right now, we're going to keep going through our messages. Fort Sumter bombarded. Uh, so when we made this move, I'm sorry, right up here to Fort Sumter, that initiated this. It kind of tells you the history, uh, and we're still bombarding this and besieging it. We should take it this turn, but this is just telling you about Fort Sumter. Um, no core before 1862. Now, at this point in the game, you're not going to know what this means. Um, Essentially, when you talk about uh, army organization, it all changed during the Civil War. And when I say it all changed, like it changed kind of worldwide based on what happened here in the Civil War. It was already changing a little bit, but the way that armies became organized during and after the American Civil War is that armies just got a lot bigger. Of course, Napoleon had huge armies, but he had them structured the way he wanted. The Russians had huge armies in the field during the Napoleonic Wars. They were structured a little different. During the American Civil War, what happened is starting, and we saw this down here with Beauregard, and the reason he's getting a command penalty is because he doesn't have an army formed here. He's essentially a general with no structure. He's just got, this brigade, another brigade. They're all just kind of haphazardly thrown together. And that's how the structure was in the States at the start of the Civil War. And that will be a problem all through 1861. Um, well, at least until October, when we can start kind of manipulating how these things are structured. And then in 1862, we can start making big grand armies with corps underneath them, and that will help us get rid of these command penalties. Of course, we don't want any, penalty like this where we're fighting at a 20% disadvantage just because we don't have things structured correctly. But at the start of the game, you don't really have a chance to structure them better. Now, you may say, well, just turn this into an army. Uh, that doesn't make any sense. We don't want the Army of Northern Virginia to be down here. And that's what it's going to create. You can only have so many armies at the start of the game, and we don't want an army down here in South Carolina. Now, are going to have troops down here that are going to defend against a possible amphibious landing by the Union. So we will leave some troops down here, but we don't want a full army down in South Carolina. It just doesn't make any sense. And as I said, as we take Sumter here, Beauregard will immediately, just through operations of the game, be transferred north, and there he will form the Army of Northern Virginia. Sumter doesn't have much of a defense, so not turning this into an army is no big deal. So anyway, we cannot form corps until 1862. I believe as the southern player, you lag the northern player. It's an advantage that the North has, is that they can form corps earlier. And just to take a step back for a second, the reason that's important is when you form a corps and put elements in that, you can put up to 18 elements, as we talked about. So to go back to Beauregard here, these are elements on the side. So essentially, these are just smaller breakdowns of this brigade. Let's just click on it. Um, you've got the 1st South Carolina, the AO 1st South Carolina, and the artillery. These are the three elements that make up this brigade. Beauregard can normally command 12 of these elements, and we talked last time why he can't in this circumstance. He's out of the chain of command. But when you form corps, you can put 18 of these elements into a corps, and no matter what, whether you have 12 elements, 14 elements, 18 elements in that corps only costs 4 command points. So, with Beauregard, who's a 3-star general and can command 12, he could have 3 corps underneath him, each one of those corps having 18 elements. That's a really powerful army, and he would be totally within his command points for that. So they're very powerful. You want to try to get these things organized as fast as you can, and that was a long way of saying the game's telling us we cannot do that. into cores anyway until 1862. What's the next message? Fortification started at the capitals. This is just kind of a freebie for you. So, um, fortification started in both capitals, works on readouts in the respective capitals of the warring nations, and also in Alexandria, Virginia for the Union, as both governments wanted to protect the most symbolic cities of their nation. Uh, don't build anything in terms of defensive structures in Washington, Richmond, and Alexandria. Now, this points out something, which is this turn, our capital moved to Richmond. The minute Virginia seceded, the capital became Richmond, uh, which is good to know. I think it's maybe down in one of our messages here that that happened. But this also is giving you a freebie as far as building defensive structures. So it told us DC, Alexandria. So the Union gets some in Alexandria as well here on the other side of the Potomac. And in Richmond, we're going to get we're going to get bonuses here as far as entrenchment goes. Now, normally, there's a maximum entrenchment in a place. By building fortifications like that, it just ups what the maximum entrenchment might be. It's just a freebie to make your capital tougher to take. Um, okay, let's go read through some of our messages here. We just saw this. Now, see, these are all in red because they were important enough that the game wanted to tell us these on our little pop-ups over here. So we've already read those three. It tells us again, oh no, we didn't want that. Let's go back down here. So these are the scripted, quote unquote, scripted events. Um, so these three things have happened. Remember, we decided to print money. The Confederacy has decided to raise taxes. Here's an interesting one. New brigadier generals have been appointed and await commands in Richmond. Virginia secedes from the Union. Again, this was in red because it's a very important event. Um, People are calming down in several cities of the Union. You have lost several demonstration decisions. We didn't really get into this last time. This goes back to the cards. So we did play our embargo card, which you saw, but we also have cards to do demonstrations in the north, which will cause their unrest to happen. And talking about this rail line that got busted up here, that's because the uneasiness or unrest up here in Baltimore was very high. We can add to that by playing demonstration cards, and there are some other things that we can put. We have an espionage card, I believe, that we can play, and we'll go look at these cards maybe in this episode, maybe in the next one. Um, so in the F12, those are our decisions. The cards are also up here. So we've looked at the books. We'll go look at the cards in a bit. And goes back to what I was talking about before. This one here, only 3 armies can be formed at this time. And that's why we're not turning Beauregard and the South Carolina grouping of troops into an army, because we're going to want one army out west, and we're going to want 2 armies here up in Virginia. I just know that from playing the game, so I want us to play the game correctly. If you were first starting the game, you didn't watch this tutorial, you're like, well, of course I'm going to turn this guy into an army. It gives him bonuses, but that's why we're not doing it, is because we can only have 3 armies at this time. That will increase over time. Uh, there were no battle messages this time. I mean, we besieged Fort Sumter, but there were no battles that really took place. Um, these are movements and restrictions. So it will tell you. We talked about locked units last time. This will tell you what units are now active. I will say in these messages, I always go through all the messages. They're very helpful in telling you what's going on. You can also click, I believe. Oh, it's on the boot, maybe? Yep. And it centers you on where this is. So Iberville is actually, think of it as New Orleans. You'll keep seeing Iberville. And when I first started playing this game, I'm not from New Orleans. I had no idea that that region was called Iberville. And I thought, man, we've got a lot going on at Iberville. What an important town that I've never heard of in my life. It's actually New Orleans. And so, in the south and the Mississippi, of course, a incredibly important strategic town that we will be defending against amphibious assault or, God forbid that Grant is marching down here. So you can now see we've got a ton of ships that have now become active down here in New Orleans. So this tells you all of that. Again, if you click on the boot, just like back here, you could click on the notepad. Oh, well, it has no associated region because, of course, we raise taxes. Um, that goes to all regions. But here, Virginia secedes from the Union. We can click on that. It'll center us on wherever that decision took place back up in here in Virginia. So we had movement restrictions, replacement new units. That did not happen. If there's any control or ownership change, we'll see that here. Let's see what this is. Oh, so this tells us, yes, we sold our cotton bales. That's great. As a matter of fact, while we're thinking about that, let's click on that. That takes us down here to Matagorda, Texas. We'll go up to our cards again. Export bales. Remember last time we had 12, now we have 11. We're going to press on the left mouse button, pick that up, drop it right there. That's great. Develop territory. While we're up here at cards, let's just go through the cards. Now let's read this one because I really like this one and I always like to have this card played when I can. These effects it gives us plus 10 loyalty in whatever region where we play it. It gives us plus 3 development points. And most importantly, possibly, is it gives us 5 free victory points. So those are just free victory points for playing this card. Now, it does cost us $5,000, but now we have, $1,463,000. So, $1.46 million. dollars. 5,000 bucks is nothing. Um, we can only play this in undeveloped and pillaged territories, so they have 25 or less development that can be targeted. And you see them pulsating in green. We're actually going to go up into Tennessee. I like to build these up. Oh, there's J.O. Shelby showed up in Little Rock. We'll go check in on him probably next episode. So I like to build up things that are, a little closer anyway to the front as opposed to some, basically desert area out in the middle of Nowheresville, Texas. It just doesn't make much sense. Interestingly enough, our old capital, Montgomery, uh, can be developed. It's like, okay, wow, that was our capital, and it's under 25% development. It goes to show you just how rural the South is. So we're still rolling around here. Um, it does get a little annoying. I wish you could click on here and it would stay, but it doesn't. You have to have your pin over this. So Corinth. Let's do Corinth. This will give us a bonus to our loyalty out here. It's going to give us 5 free victory points. As you can see, this puts this little circle. That's how the icons always work um, out here, and this will start to build. Now that card is gone. It will show back up at some point. Um, usually every 2 to 3, 4 months when this thing completes. So this will take a specific number of turns. You can see it here. It was added 0 turns ago, and it ends in 9 turns. So in 9 turns, 4.5 months, we will get another one of these cards, and we will want to play that again. Counter intel. Um, if the North has spies down here, or we think they do, so you would probably play this in Richmond, to be honest with you, to try to hurt the North's intel if you think they're spying on you. Draft. Uh, at some point, if things get dire, we may have to institute a draft. You can play this card into regions to up your manpower there. Requisitions, if we have an army that's starving somewhere, we may have to play the requisition card. Plunder, we can go into the north. Uh, it will use raiders to plunder and pillage small towns. So we may use that later, especially out in Illinois, out here in the west. It might be something we want to use. We talked about export bales, runner. So blockade runners, if we're having a really hard time getting supplies to certain places because they're under siege. So let's say the North moves a some steamboats down here, and we can't get any supplies into a place. We might need that. Clearing. This gives you 5 development points. It costs $5,000. Let's do this. We might as well. We can play this card. $5,000 doesn't matter. We're going to also put this in Corinth, so we're going to really be trying to build up Corinth a little bit. Open trail. This takes you out to Texas or some of these other places where there are no roads. So an open trail, if there's no road and no railroad, you can play this open trail. It ups your movement when you're going to try to move through that region. So these are all very interesting. The same thing here with roads. It costs quite a bit, but you get some victory points. So if we have some extra money and or we have a place, let's say we are often moving troops through here for some reason and it's taking forever, we can build a road. Telegraph line. Actually, we're gonna play telegraph line too. This gives us 5 victory points for $10,000. You can't beat that. It also gives us 5 development points. Uh, you know, hold on. Let's put this back down here. Um, let's go find a good place to put this. I may put it in Charleston, South Carolina, because we probably want to have a telegraph line there. I don't think it really has that much practical effect as far as communications or whatnot, but it does give us 5 victory points, and it only cost us $10,000, so that's great. Build defensive works. Now we're going to go up here. Um, and we cannot build these yet. This, now remember we got that message this time. They're automatically building this in Richmond. So this kind of tells us what it is. We will prepare our defensive positions and entrench all friendly units in the targeted region, providing they are not besieged. Um, so this gives you an entrenchment bonus. It also ups the loyalty. So your troops are entrenched better. You get a plus 10% loyalty in that region. It costs you nothing, and you need a city and 3 infantry units. So sometimes you may want this in Manassas or you may want it in Culpeper. I often build it in Petersburg. So the Union troops don't have this kind of free reign. They're going to take Richmond from the south, by chance. Because if they take Petersburg here, you're really in a world of hurt, right? Because Richmond now is completely cut off from the rest of the Confederacy. But that's beyond the scope of what we're talking about here. You can play this card from time to time. I think maybe it takes 2 or 3 turns, and then it'll pop up again. So these cards, you can see they give you multiples of how many times, and if you have more than one, you can play them every turn until you're out. If you only have one, you can play them, and as soon as it takes, or as soon as it plays through this, and it plays the number of turns it takes to actually accomplish this task, then you'll get another one. So these cards are kind of cool. I like how it works. Landmine, if somebody has defensive fortifications, you can blow them up. So you can play this card if the North was dug in, in Alexandria here, we could play the landmine card. I think there are certain restrictions on that. But we'll go through that if that comes up. Build outposts, that happens out west. So there are a lot of undeveloped regions out there. You maybe want to build an outpost, and that'll give you, defensive advantages, of course. So we are now through all of these messages. We have not yet taken a turn, but I think I'm going to stop this episode right here because we have quite a bit to talk about here when it comes to Richmond and what we're going to be doing with all of these generals. So we've had it, Virginia seceded this turn, and we've had all of these generals show up that have different. These are division generals, which we can't even form divisions yet. We'll get into this. This is the 61 generals pool, so these guys generally would be generals over your armies. These guys are better suited to be generals over your divisions. We have now a base kind of a home base force here for Richmond to protect Richmond. We also have some ships that are still locked, but we're building them now. We're starting to build out a navy. So I'm gonna put a hard stop on this one here. We're at like 40 minutes. I think that's plenty of time for a second episode. So in episode 3, we are going to revisit what Beauregard is doing down here. Make sure that, we definitely want him in an assault posture. We want him to take Fort Sumter this time. Do we need to get more aggressive? We'll talk about that next time. We'll go into these generals that are at Richmond and what else. You saw J.O. Shelby over to the west. What else has shown up? But we're going to do that all next time. So thank you, as always, for joining me here on Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we try to help you learn to play these, what I consider great games, games that I'm passionate about and I want to get more people into. If you enjoyed this episode, please click subscribe. Every subscribe helps. And I'll see you next time. Thanks again.